Hi everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. As you can see on the screen in front of you today, I thought I'd just briefly touch upon the, well, quote unquote, newly released new Monaco SQL Editor. So what am I talking about? Well, after about 35 years, whatever the actual date is now, Microsoft finally listened to us begging for an update of the SQL editor. Now, I'm not talking about the query by design editor, which is a phenomenal thing in its own right, but there are many instances where, well, we need to edit the code, the SQL statement raw. And for that, basically Access had nothing. The SQL editor, the raw SQL editor, was worse than even using Notepad until very, very recently, where they added one or two little functionalities, amongst others, find and replace. But it is a primitive text editor, if you want to even call it that. And finally, the dev team, about, I'm not quite sure now, 4 or 5 years ago, agreed that they were going to improve upon it. Now, originally, this new feature was supposed to come out in, I believe it was 2021 was the original target. Things, happened, and anyway, eventually that got revised to, I believe it was September of this year, and they more or less hit their target. Now, if we look at it a little bit for a second, historically, it was initially released in the Beta Insider channel quite some time ago, actually, in reality. But things went so horribly wrong that the dev team had to pull the entire feature completely off the beta channel. They made it no longer available because it was so horrific. And then after several months of, I guess, fine-tuning and hopefully fixing things, we recently, in the last couple of weeks, have seen a number of people posting, and seen it myself, that the feature suddenly appeared on my installation. So it's been deployed, and we have a blog article right here on the Microsoft Access blog, where the product manager finally announced that yes, it was out in the wild. So we have a new SQL editor. They've labeled it the Monaco SQL Editor. Let's just jump in. Right off the bat, if you look at their blog, you're going to see they specifically mention this. This new feature is solely available to Microsoft 365 subscribers. So even if you bought Office 2024, Access 2024, you will not see this feature. And you'll see at a later point in time in this discussion, you may be happy not to see this new feature. Moving on. Then we get into, well, here's a screenshot of what it looks like. You can get several screenshots. People have posted in forums. You can also check out the documentation, the support documentation. You'll see all sorts of screenshots of what we're talking about, what it looks like. And several people have brought forth a number of problems since it's been out. So we're seeing the typical Microsoft Access dev team approach. It's just they release features well before they've been ironed out. And I guess they slowly address issues as people complain. I don't know what else to make of it anymore. There's issues with not being able to do on-the-fly queries anymore. You used to be able to open up Query Editor, go into the SQL, and just start writing. You can't do that. The minute you want to switch into this mode, you have to save the query. So ad hoc queries no longer really possible. You've got to save them. So you're going to be creating something in your object listing. So to that end, the way I now operate is I just simply have what I've labeled a bogus query, and I'll just use that one object when I want to tinker around and play around with things that really have no consequence on the database itself. And then I have code in my cleanup that will delete that bogus query, knowing that it really is of no value to the system in which I'm working. but it's still, always these extra useless steps that take time and just slow us down continuously. And this prompt to always save, it's tedious after a while. You've got other people mentioning that it is slow. There are people reporting that parts of their query, when they switch modes and whatnot, disappears. So they literally lose part of their queries. Which brings me to the next section here, which was the discussions. Now, you're going to see in this section, I've taken a couple quotes from various discussions, and you're going to say, Daniel, they're very negative. And when I go on forums, I see positive, lots of positive in reality. And yes, you do. But, and there's a big but here, if you look superficially at the discussions about the new SQL editor, you're going to very quickly see, oh yeah, there's a lot of positive, yay, looking good, great job team, all this type of stuff. But if you start looking a little deeper, the positive is coming from people who are more often commenting about the fact that we've gotten a new SQL editor. The people that have actually used the SQL editor and know what they're talking about typically are giving these reviews. And they're not pretty reviews. And that's the reality of the situation. So yes, there's a lot of positive energy, happiness and eagerness that we're getting finally this feature updated. We have been asking for it, no word of a lie, for 30 years. We've been begging the Access dev team to do this for 30 years, to bring it up to par. I know since I've been an MVP, 15 years, every single year this subject has been brought up. Okay? So this is something we've been clamoring for forever. And so, yes, there's a lot of happiness that it's finally being done, finally being addressed. But the reality is that anyone that has used the new SQL editor, in my viewpoint, from what I've seen, from the people I've spoken with, well, they've been disappointed. And that happiness quickly fades. And you're going to see these comments, especially the first one here by Mark P. Fan, is not pretty at all. And I think it's expressing a more generalized dissatisfaction with the dev team and the way things have been going for a good decade now, maybe even longer. And I think a lot of people actually feel this way. They may not come out and say it outwardly, and especially not in a public forum, but I think a lot of people are in this situation, and not just about the SQL editor. We can look at modern charts. We can look at what the deprecation of ADP. We can look at the modern web browser control. We can look at all sorts of different things that have been removed, changed, supposedly improved. And I think a lot of the anger that he's expressing here relative to the SQL Monaco editor, it's just more of the same. So I'm going to let you review these if you want to, which just brings us down to, like I say, the people that have used it have been expressing a lot of disappointment. And it brings us to these two discussion posts that I have links to here. You just click on them. But to the point that people that have gotten it are now looking for ways of getting rid of the new SQL editor because it is causing them so many problems. And to me, the minute you see this on week 1 of the release of your new feature, alarm bells should be going off in Redmond. I know they aren't, but they should be. Product management, office management above the Access dev team, the office, whoever's in charge of office development, and even above, should be very, very disheartened to see this type of post being posted on the first week of the release of this new feature. That people are so disappointed and having such an issue with what they've put out there that they're looking to disable it completely. If that doesn't tell you you've missed your mark as a developer, as a corporation, well then anything else will just fall on deaf ears. Because if you don't see this as an issue, then you're never going to see anything as an issue. Once again, in my article, I just mentioned, if you want to post on the Access feedback portal, I keep saying it over and over and over. Do not use the feedback in your application. It doesn't allow other users to see the comments and upvote them, add their own comments to it, and allow Microsoft and others to see that this really is an issue. When you use the feedback in your application, it's a one-off, and that's the end of it. You have no visibility on it. No one else has visibility on it to add their comments and whatnot. But by going to the feedback portal, it's there, black on white. It's not going anywhere. Other people can vote on it. Other people can add their 2 cents to the matter. And it can show quickly, in some instances, the importance of these problems. So please, please, please use the portal, not your Office application feedback buttons. Moving on. So this is what's coming out of forums, what other people are saying. Is it really that bad? And like everything else in life, everything is subjective. You see the typical people patting Microsoft on the back. We have a new feature. This is glorious, But the reality, it's not that. We can all be Microsoft yes man. I can do it just as much as the other person. I choose not to. I choose to tell it as it is. And although the old legacy SQL editor was in dire need of an update, and it is, it was pitiful what we had up until now, have we moved forward? And that's really the question. Is this improving our ability to work, our ability to do things better, faster, simpler? And this is where things become very gray very quickly. The simple fact of the matter is, if you look at this guy here, it already looks tired. It looks 1984. I'm sorry, but it simply does. This does not represent modern development in 2024. Number two, I personally, so I don't like the background, this gray, I find it to be offensive in reality. But even the highlighting colors to me don't make sense. And I find the contrast with the gray at times to be difficult to visually read. So, there's a big push from Microsoft on accessibility. I question that right here, right now. So I find a failure in the design, the formatting and layout and colors here. And that brings me to this whole aspect of configuration and color schemes. So let's just start with the color aspect. So I don't like them, and I know a number of people that have stated that as well, so it's not just me. But what bothers me more is that we have no configuration on the matter. So in 2024, with a brand new SQL editor, I can't change any of the colors. I can change the fonts, I'll give you that. We were given the ability to change the font, but you cannot change the colors. Moreover, why is it not complying with the Office theme? If I'm in a white theme, why is it not white? If I'm in dark, why is it not dark? Why is this now separate from the Office application and the settings of the Office application? It makes no sense. The second aspect of this, and it comes back to this whole point here where people are asking to get rid of the feature altogether, is when you start looking into how do I disable it? Well, you quickly learn that you have to disable it on a database by database scenario. So you have to open up each one of your databases one by one, and you have to disable it. And that also brings another point to this whole discussion is, why did Microsoft, when they brought this into existence, did they automatically enable it and force it upon everyone? Why was it not just, there it is, now you can enable it if you want to use it? No. We're going to push it out on everyone. Everyone's going to use it. And if you don't like it, you can have the hassle of disabling it throughout your database. And there's no global setting. So it really is a database by database. It is not a client. It isn't an access setting. It's a database setting. So this, once again, disappointing. There is, like I suggested, this can be automated, but once again, this is putting it on us to do. When Microsoft could easily have made this a global setting, they could easily not have forced this on people and made it opt-in instead of what they've done, opt-out. It just shows a lack of respect on multiple levels once again. Then we get into this whole thing of comments. Now, one of the benefits here was we were supposed to get the ability to do comments. And you look once again and you see, oh, they gave us a comment. Yes, you can do a comment if we're talking about Access, but you can only do a comment at the top. So you cannot put comments throughout your SQL like you can do in other scenarios, in other languages, and other tools. So from that viewpoint, once again, it's a fail. I'm sorry. If you're going to the point of improving the SQL editor and you're wanting to provide us the functionality of adding comments, we need to be able to add comments everywhere, just like in another tool. So yeah, they gave us comments, but once again, it's a half-done job. Speed, it is horrifically slow to load. Once you're in it, it's fine. But that initial load is slow. 3 to 5 seconds for me. I know other people, it's even longer. It has to do with your hardware and whatnot. Now, why is it slow? Well, from my understanding is basically this new SQL editor is built upon the new modern web browser control. And that is another new feature that was plagued with bugs, and one of which the biggest issues with the modern web browser is its speed. It is slow. And I highly, highly suspect that having built on the foundations of the modern web browser, this new modern Monaco SQL Editor reflects this speed issue. So, once again, it's another weak implementation. It crashes. I've had it happen. Multiple people have had it, reported it. And other people, like I said, have been reporting issues when they're switching modes and whatnot, where part of their SQL statements literally just disappear. So losing parts of your query. And there are other things. People have been reporting all sorts of issues with pass-through queries and whatnot. So, yeah, we've moved forward. We've got these line numbers. We can put a comment at the top, blah, blah, blah. But it's plagued with issues currently. And it's the speed. You can get past a lot of issues, and you can hope that, over time the dev team will remedy them, maybe. But this speed issue and crashing are just killers. To the point that people are asking to get rid of the feature. Let's not forget this. So, where does that leave us? Like I say here, I'm more than disappointed. I don't understand how this left Microsoft and was deployed as is. I really don't. There's a complete and utter lack of quality assurance internally. There's a complete and lack of accountability. It is what it is, and it really is now just a question of praying that over time things will get smoothed out. But I don't hold out too much hope on that, because I've been holding out hope on that for the modern web browser, and all fixes on that front seem to have just stopped, come to a complete and utter halt. So, how much more are they going to invest in this? I don't know. I sure hope they continue, because it needs a lot of love. Which brings me to the next section, is how can you actually disable this? So basically, as I mentioned above, this is a database by database thing. So we have to change a setting in every single database you want to disable the editor in. But basically, you just go into File, Options, Current Database, and there you will find near the top an option here, Enable Monaco SQL Editor, and you're going to uncheck it to disable it. You'd check it to enable it. It's covered in the blog. If you take a look here, right here is the picture. So like I say, file, options, current database, and it's this checkbox that you would uncheck. The other thing is, should you wish to do this through VBA, as I suggested to someone in a forum, you could create a routine to go through all your databases and just change this option. But basically, this is the command you're going to want to run. So setting false deactivates it, and setting it to true would enable it. Part of the reason I think we get a little disappointed with what has been released is the fact that there have been a number of alternatives out there now for quite some time, because people got tired of waiting for Microsoft to do what needed to be done. And many of these are far superior to what has just been released by the dev team. And I think that adds a little bit to this whole situation, is seeing what could have been versus what has been released. And this is why I have this section here. If you're looking at this and you're disappointed, don't let that completely deflate you. Look at some of the other alternatives. Perhaps getting one of these will help you, and you can just sidestep this whole issue altogether. I even post here a part. It was an improvement that I had done. I got tired of waiting too, like everyone else. And I created this tool in which you can, as you can see, I don't have a 1980s background. And in reality, this is HTML. So it could be any color background I want. I have line numbering. I have syntax highlighting. I have all of this is CSS, so I can change the colors very easily for any aspect of it I want. The highlighting, the keywords, everything is customizable. So this, once again, just brings me back to is if I could do that, and I'm a one-off who doesn't specialize in this, I don't have any special knowledge like the Access dev team does. How is it they couldn't even achieve that as a minimum? Just the configuration aspect of it. And then you get into the whole testing, how they release things and nothing had been testing and all these issues have popped up. There's no way they weren't there for them to find in the first place. So there's a whole QA question there too. But just know there are a whole slew of options. I put it through the Wayback Machine. But if you go and check some of these out, various add-ins and other tools that you can use, you may want to go through some of these, give them a try, see how they all work out. You might be impressed by some of them. Some of them are actually quite nice, quite impressive. To me, like right off the bat, something like this, so much better than what we've been given. But regardless, so take a look at some of these, and then there's always the more generalized tools. So it's not Access specific, but Notepad++, that's a tool I've been using for HTML, for CSS, even for query building for quite some time now. And they have extensions you can add in to help you with formatting, which is something we still don't have in this new tool for indentation and auto formatting and things like that. So yeah, there's lots and lots of other options available to us. So don't let this latest debacle deflate you. Moving on. The whole is, where is Microsoft in all this? Well, when I originally wrote this, Microsoft was nowhere. People were reporting that this new feature was out, and yet there was no indication of it anywhere. You couldn't find it on their blog. You couldn't find it in the What's New. I haven't reviewed the What's New recently. I don't know if it's been added or not. But a few days after that, finally, they did release their blog. So they did make this generalized blog, where once again, I find it lets down is, like I say, there's no indication here as to the build or version number in which it appears, and they have no idea of timelines for various update channels. They also don't have anywhere that I'm aware of where they're tracking all these various bugs, because as per the usual, the fix-it page has nothing. It's a useless page. So yeah, they came out more or less a PR article, and yeah, I was actually hoping for a little bit more meat on the bone. At least give us build version numbers and update channel information so we know when it's coming and to where. But that's basically it, guys. That's where we stand. We have a new feature. In my personal opinion, it's a complete and utter letdown. I'm floored that this was even allowed to be released in its current state. I have no words. But now we're in the position where, well, you can disable it. Okay, so let us not forget that. You can disable it. As one person also said, is you can create, which is something I've done years ago, you create a shell database, so where you already have certain key modules and you configure things the way you want. So you would disable this by default. And then whenever you're starting a new project, you take that shell database as your starting point, so you don't have to do this configuration every single time. Sadly, for the existing databases, you do, but that is the price to pay. And beyond that, it's a waiting game. We just have to sit back and see what the dev team does with all of this. I consider this to be more or less a disaster of a release. Guess it can only get better. I guess silver lining in this situation is things can only improve, I hope. But that's where we are with the new Monaco SQL Editor in Microsoft Access. What are your thoughts? Have you used it? What did you think of it? What did you think of the color scheme? What do you think of the configuration? What do you think of the comments only being at the top in Access? What do you think about the contrast of colors and the autocomplete and the delays in loading? And have you experienced crashing? Have you experienced loss of SQL, parts of your SQL statements? Drop me a comment below. Let me know what you guys think. Am I way off on this one? And I'm going to stop there. Thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day, guys.